The night she stood at my door, rain soaking her hair and fear clinging to her like a second skin, I understood how thin the line is between having a life and losing it. One moment you are steady, breathing, believing tomorrow will be better, and the next you are holding your breath, asking a stranger for the smallest space in the world just to survive until morning. That night did not begin with romance or hope. It began with exhaustion, silence, and a question that carried more weight than either of us wanted to admit. Before this story pulls you deeper, take a moment right now. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of showing up for someone when they need it most, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that are still searching for hope. My name is Daniel Carter, and I had grown used to living alone in my small apartment on the edge of a quiet American town where people waved politely but rarely asked how you were really doing. After my divorce 2 years earlier, silence had become my companion. I filled my days with work at the hardware store and my nights with routine, convincing myself that loneliness was easier than disappointment. I had stopped expecting life to surprise me, stopped believing that broken things could be repaired. That belief had settled deep into my bones, and I carried it with me when I opened the door that night. She was someone I knew but did not truly know, a woman named Grace Miller who attended the same church but sat 3 rows ahead, always alone, always leaving early. People spoke about her in fragments, rumors softened by pity, a difficult marriage, a sudden separation, no family nearby. I had nodded when her name came up, never imagining that she would be standing in front of me, eyes red from crying, holding a small overnight bag like it contained her entire life. She did not explain much, and I did not ask. Some moments do not need details to be understood. The look on her face told me everything that words could not. She had reached the end of her strength. She needed rest more than answers, safety more than pride. In that instant, I felt something crack open inside me, something I had sealed shut after my own heart had been broken. I stepped aside and let her in, not knowing that this small act would change both of us forever. The apartment was modest, almost bare, with a couch that had seen better days and a bed that took up most of the bedroom. I offered what I could, embarrassed by how little that felt. She settled on the couch, but sleep did not come easily for either of us. The air was thick with unspoken thoughts, and every sound seemed louder in the dark. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain fade into a distant hum, wondering how 2 strangers could share a space yet feel so alone. Grace barely slept that night. When morning came, she sat at the kitchen table holding a mug of coffee she did not drink, staring out the window as if she were afraid of what she might see. Over breakfast, she spoke quietly, not in dramatic confessions but in careful truths. Her marriage had not ended in a single explosion but in years of neglect, control, and emotional exhaustion. She had tried to make it work, believing endurance was the same as love, until one night she realized that staying meant losing herself completely. She left with nothing but a bag, and the hope that somewhere, someone would not ask her to be smaller than she already felt. I listened, feeling the weight of her words settle into my chest. I recognized parts of myself in her story, the way loneliness can exist even when you share a home with someone, the way silence can be louder than shouting. I wanted to fix things for her, to offer solutions, but all I could give was presence, and so I did. I told her she could stay as long as she needed, even as fear. Whispered that closeness always leads to pain. The days that followed were both simple and heavy. Grace slept on the couch at first, rising early to avoid being in the way. I insisted she take the bed, though she resisted, not wanting to be a burden. We found a rhythm, sharing meals, sharing silence, sharing the small routines that make life feel human again. She helped clean the apartment, not because it needed it, but because she needed to feel useful. I noticed how she flinched at sudden noises, how she apologized for things that required no apology. Trauma leaves fingerprints on the soul, invisible but unmistakable. For me, the challenge was different, but no less real. I had built my life around emotional distance, telling myself it was protection, Having Grace in my space stirred feelings I had buried, forcing me to confront the parts of myself that were still wounded. I feared misinterpretation, feared crossing lines, feared that kindness could be mistaken for something else. I was also afraid of wanting more, of hoping again. There were moments when the tension felt unbearable, when the air between us buzzed with questions neither of us dared to ask. At night, I lay awake listening to her breathing from the bedroom, aware of the closeness yet determined to keep my distance. Respect became my quiet promise to her, a way of saying that safety mattered more than desire. As weeks passed, Grace began to change. The guarded look in her eyes softened. She laughed occasionally, surprised by the sound of her own joy. She started talking about finding work, about saving money, about the possibility of a future that belonged to her. Watching her rebuild herself was both beautiful and painful, because it reminded me of everything I had given up on in my own life. One evening, after a particularly hard day at work, I found myself unraveling. The store was short-staffed, my boss impatient, customers unkind. I came home carrying the weight of it all, and Grace noticed. Immediately. She did not offer advice or platitudes. She simply sat with me, listening, holding space for my frustration the way I had held space for her fear. In that moment, something shifted. We were no longer just two broken people sharing a roof. We were becoming something else, something gentler and stronger. The real challenge came when Grace received a call from her estranged husband, a voice from the past demanding answers, control, reconciliation on his terms. The call left her shaken, doubts resurfacing, old wounds reopened. She questioned whether she was strong enough to keep choosing herself, whether leaving had been a mistake. I watched her struggle, knowing that I could not fight her battles for her. All I could do was remind her of who she was becoming, of the courage it had taken to walk away. That night, she admitted how afraid she was of being alone again, of stepping into the world without a safety net. Her fear mirrored my own, and for the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge it. We were both standing at the edge of something unknown, unsure whether to retreat or move forward. Time has a way of revealing truth through patience. Slowly, without grand declarations, trust grew between us. It showed up in small ways, like shared smiles across the kitchen, like quiet prayers said in the living room, like the understanding that neither of us needed to pretend anymore. We learned each other's scars and treated them with care. Near the end of her stay, Grace found a small apartment and a job at a local library. The news filled me with pride and a surprising ache. I had grown used to her presence, to the warmth she brought into my carefully controlled life. The thought of the apartment, returning to silence, felt heavier than I expected. On her last night, as boxes sat by the door, the air was thick with emotion. We talked about gratitude, about how unexpected kindness can change the course of a life. She thanked me for giving her a place to rest when the world felt too heavy. I thanked her for reminding me that opening your door can also open your heart. Before this story reaches its final moment, I want to ask you something special. If you have ever been helped by a stranger, or if you have ever offered kindness without knowing how it would end, please comment below and share your experience. Your words might be the hope someone else is searching for right now. When Grace left the next morning, the apartment felt different, not emptier, but fuller somehow, as if her courage had lingered in the walls. We did not promise each other anything beyond honesty and respect. Love, we had learned, does not need urgency to be real. Weeks later, we met for coffee, then dinner, then walks through the park where autumn leaves fell like quiet blessings. What grew between us was not born from desperation but from healing. We moved forward slowly, honoring the past without letting it define us. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that compassion can change lives and that sometimes the simplest acts carry the deepest meaning, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps spread stories that believe in humanity. In the end, that night at the door was never just about a place to sleep. It was about two people learning that love can begin with safety, that healing can start with a single step inside, and that sometimes, staying with someone means giving them the space to become who they were always meant to be.